So, are you nervous?
Market competition is actually competition for the purchasing decision of the individual consumer. What we hope for is that there is a level playing field in terms of policy and regulations, so that whoever emerges, right, is emerging because of the merits of their business model. It ultimately must come down to actually who gives a better deal to the Vietnamese consumer and to Vietnamese society, who supports the national ambition to transform into a digital economy better, and who can provide stronger support for Vietnamese enterprises to help them to participate in the digital economy. I think on all of these fronts, we are quite comfortable with what we're doing. More than 90% of the sales transactions on Shopee today here in Vietnam are actually for Vietnamese sellers in the last 3 years, and supported something like 350,000 sellers here in Vietnam to bring their product overseas.
Đây là TheInsight, một podcast của Zee News, nơi trò chuyện cùng lãnh đạo các tập đoàn và doanh nghiệp về cách họ thích nghi với những biến chuyển mới trong môi trường kinh doanh và đầu tư. Tôi là Lan Anh và khách mời ngày hôm nay của chúng ta là ông Jason Bay, Giám đốc quốc gia thị trường Việt Nam, tập đoàn Sea.
Hi everybody, I'm very happy to be here and part of this program with Lan Anh. Tôi là Jason and I'm very pleased to be able to share with you what Shopee and Sea are doing here in Vietnam.
Thanks to you to join us today, and many thanks to invite us in the at the Shopee office in Ho Chi Minh City today. But how are you today? Before we start,
very good. I come into Vietnam every now and then to support the team here and to work with our stakeholders to try and understand the Vietnamese market and how we can help to support the development of e-commerce here in Vietnam.
I suppose that before we start, can you share a little bit about the relationship between Shopee and Sea Group? Because Shopee is definitely a very popular e-commerce platform in Vietnam, but maybe some audience may not know much about the relationship with Sea.
So Sea Limited started as Garena, the online and electronic games company, about 15 years ago. We went public in 2017. And we named ourselves and rebranded as Sea, which is the holding company. Shopee is one of our business units and has been here in Vietnam since 2015.
Yeah, but how about you? Because I know that before joining Shopee, you have taken some management roles in public services and technology in Singapore, right? So what brought you to Sea and Shopee?
I think it's alignment of vision, ultimately. And you're right, I did spend many years with the Singapore government, primarily focusing on technology policy and then subsequently technology development. So I think when you think about digital transformation, actually, I saw firsthand how powerful technology can be at helping us to become more resilient during the COVID-19 pandemic. After the pandemic, I decided I would try something different and I joined Sea. Because at the end of the day, if you think about it, both the government as well as companies in the technology space like Sea, we are all about trying to use technology for good, right? Trying to use technology and harness the potential to help society, to make a better living for everybody. What is different, I guess, is with the public sector and the private sector. In the public sector, you actually have very few touch points to drive behavior change. But when you think about the number of times you shop online today or you transact with your bank online, actually, there's a lot more potential in the private sector to really shape behavior. I think the other aspect is in Singapore, we are only about 5-6 million people. And here in Vietnam, you have 100 million, right? So that's a 20 times difference. The challenges for digital transformation are also quite immense. You have the urban-rural divide and inclusivity, not only in the primary cities, but also in the rest of the country. That becomes really important. And these are challenges that we don't really face in Singapore. So I see it as a bit of a learning opportunity. It is a challenge, but it's also a really interesting learning opportunity to be able to deliver on this mission of technology for good. And I think of the companies that are active in this space in Singapore and in the region, Sea and Shopee, I think are very much at the forefront of that. So it's really an alignment, right, of my personal vision as well as the mission of the company.
Yeah. So and you say that after COVID-19, the pace of the growth of the e-commerce in Vietnam is really rapid, right?
Yeah.
So but when you compare to other neighboring countries, how is Vietnamese market, e-commerce market?
So I think if we go back to COVID-19, I think Vietnam did really well, right? I think first and foremost, in terms of lives saved, Vietnam was upfront. And in terms of vaccinating the population, I think we did a really good job here. That allowed Vietnam, in a sense, to use COVID-19 as an opportunity to raise awareness about the importance of digital transformation. When we couldn't go to the shops, how do people buy their groceries? We found ourselves in many countries around the world looking for online e-commerce as a means of addressing this challenge, right? And I think we saw a huge adoption of e-commerce during COVID-19. Now that the pandemic is over, I think where Vietnam is focused on is also to try and harness e-commerce to drive long-term, inclusive, economic development. And I think the government is very serious about that. The Prime Minister is, personally leading a national committee on digital transformation. We have the work plan for developing e-commerce from 2020 to 2025, and I think now we are looking at the next 5-year plan. We are looking at maybe the digital economy growing to maybe 30% of the Vietnamese economy over the next couple of years. And I think this is a sign of the ambition. It is a challenging, target to set, but I think Vietnam is in a very good position, both in terms of its economic drivers, but also in terms of how it is using and looking at e-commerce as an opportunity to raise the standard of living and to raise the quality of economic development in the country.
And all of them are like the opportunities for Shopee to rapid growth in Vietnam, right?
Yes. I see ourselves as really just supporting that overall mission, right? That overall ambition of driving e-commerce development. We're obviously one of the leading players, and we've grown only because the Vietnamese public, the Vietnamese government support what we are doing here, right? That we are all aligned in this objective, that we believe that digital technology can improve our lives. So in a sense, we're just supporting, and we're very happy to be able to play a significant role in that journey.
Yeah, but actually you are a dominant player in Vietnam with a very dominant market share, right?
Whatever our market position is, at the end of the day, the percentages at the aggregate level, that tells one story. But I think the other story that's also important is when it comes to the individual buyer, they are making choices every day. And they are sophisticated enough to choose among different platforms that they want to buy from or buy through. If we don't have a good value proposition for the individual buyer, then there's no reason that they will stick with us. Then they might go, and shop on other platforms, and then that will eventually flow through. So when we talk about, market position, whether you are number 1, number 2, or number 3, at the end of the day, that's one story. But I think it's more important that you think about market position as a fight and a battle to compete for the attention and for the purchasing decision of the individual. And that's something that we have to do for tens of millions of Vietnamese every day, and hundreds of millions of consumers across Southeast Asia.
But frankly, we can see the rise of TikTok Shop for maybe 2 years, and not to mention the fact that Lazada, though it is experiencing a restructuring procedures, but it still committed to Vietnam. So, are you nervous?
Well, at the end of the day, when we think about competition in the marketplace, the fact that there is such intense competition goes back to, Vietnam having a lot of potential in this space, right? So the fact that they are here, I think, in a sense, we are pushing each other to innovate our business models and to invest in building up the capabilities to support e-commerce here in Vietnam. I suppose what's more important for us is that if we want to drive innovation in the digital economy, right, for the benefit of Vietnamese society, then what we hope for is that there is a level playing field in terms of policy and regulations, so that whoever emerges, right, is emerging because of the merits of their business model. And when we think about the merits of the business model, it ultimately must come down to actually who gives a better deal to the Vietnamese consumer and to Vietnamese society, who supports the national ambition to transform into a digital economy better, and who can provide stronger support for Vietnamese enterprises to help them to participate in the digital economy. I think on all of these fronts, we are quite comfortable with what we're doing. Obviously, we don't want to rest on our laurels, but we want to keep pushing. And to the extent that our competitors in the marketplace are also supporting in that journey, right? I think we welcome that, and it keeps us on our toes. And hopefully what we do also keeps them on their toes.
But when many more and more competitors jump in, Shopee have to adjust your plan or launch new initiatives to fight with?
Well, we have to constantly adjust our initiatives. You're right. Some of it is in response to the market. Others are, I think, in response to the consumer. Right? And if we believe in consumer centricity, then actually the change in behavior of the consumer is ultimately what drives us. If we go back to what I said earlier, at the end of the day, market competition is actually competition for the purchasing decision of the individual consumer, right? So what are Vietnamese consumers concerned about? I think they are constantly looking for good deals. They are constantly price sensitive, but at the same time, they can be quite discerning about quality. And trust is also really important, right? Trust in terms of when I make a decision to purchase, how do I expect the delivery to come? Will it happen within the promised timeline? Are we talking about, next day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days delivery? These are important decisions or factors that play into the decision of a consumer, right? And we have to constantly innovate on that. And that means investing in the infrastructure, investing in the logistics supply chain, and also coming up with new methods of attracting and appealing to consumers, giving them the information that they need in order to make the purchasing decision.
Speaking of that, we can see that some Chinese platforms, they are so good at logistics and also good deals, very low price, right? And I can see that not only Vietnam but also many other countries in the world are afraid and have to be conscious about the participation of these online platforms.
Yeah. So I think different platforms will anchor their business models on different value proposition. We've been in Vietnam for close to 10 years now, right? Since 2015. And the management and the team here in Vietnam, I mean, I'm obviously not Vietnamese, but the vast majority of the team here is run by Vietnamese local staff. They understand the market best, and in fact, many times they will tell us in Singapore what their understanding of the market is, and we say, okay, right, you know the market best, and we support your decisions. Yeah. What that also means is because of how long we've been here, I think we differentiate ourselves from some of the other marketplaces and platforms by the degree of focus that we have on Vietnamese enterprises. So more than 90% of the sales transactions on Shopee today here in Vietnam are actually for Vietnamese sellers, local Vietnamese enterprises selling their own products domestically. Right? And I think that will contrast with perhaps a business model that is more focused primarily on bringing imports in from outside of Vietnam. Right? So in other words, what we are trying to do here is to make sure that our participation in the digital economy both uplifts buyers in terms of access to a variety of choices, both domestically and internationally, but also uplifts sellers in terms of raising their capabilities, giving them the support needed to participate in the digital economy, and growing the economy of Vietnam.
I remember that these days you conducted a series of live stream with some farmers, with KOLs, KOCs to boost some agricultural products Vietnam, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So I believe you are referring to this Tin Hoa Viet Du Key program, right?
Yes,
And then
yes.
Shopee Fruit. So I think the idea behind that is, if you think about it, big enterprises will be able to take care of themselves. And yes, we do support some of them, right, through programs like Enabling Vietnam. But 50% of the Vietnamese economy, the labor force, is involved in SME production. And a large proportion of them are in the agricultural sector, which is still very important for Vietnam. Right? What we choose to focus on ultimately, I think we cater it to the characteristics of the local market. So here in Vietnam, because that is such an important part of the economy, when we think about impact, and if we think back, what can we do for tech for good, then we have to deal with the challenges that perhaps the agricultural industry faces when it comes to trying to participate in the digital economy. Right? It's not always the easiest thing to do, but I think because we are here and we see ourselves as part of Vietnam's digital transformation journey, that part of the economy is really critical to support. So that's why we will run these programs. Now, of course, as Vietnam develops economically, moves up the value chain, moves into other industries, I think we will at some point in time also follow that journey, right? So it's a partnership, it's walking alongside each other. And in a sense, the feedback goes in both directions, right? So as Vietnam's economy evolves, then our participation and the strategies and the campaigns that we run also have to evolve. But I would say for now, agriculture is an important part. We will continue to support that, even as we also look at, perhaps other categories of products that we sell on the platform. The emphasis that a lot of people have is on digital, but you need to focus on transformation. And the hardest part of transformation is transforming organizations and people. Now, this is not only a problem in agriculture, it's actually a problem that's common in many SMEs, which is you're fighting for your survival every day, right? In the market, you're trying to grow your business, you're trying to keep costs down, you're trying to reach out to as many customers as possible. It's not very easy to find the manpower or the resources, to step away from the day-to-day operations and think about what do we need to do different, right? And that's why this topic of strategic change is always so difficult for companies to deal with. What we have tried to do through some of our support programs, like Enabling Vietnam, is to dispatch our resources to support individual companies through that journey, right? And it can be very, end-to-end, right? Looking at the whole logistics and fulfillment, and the e-commerce journey, and then supporting them throughout that whole process, because we understand that it is difficult for people to change their business processes. And sometimes changing the business process means sacrificing in the short term in order to gain in the long term. But I think this part of the journey is important. Many people underestimate the value of doing this transformation work. But just because it's difficult doesn't mean that we leave it aside. I think we need to spend some resources. And obviously, we have to do this in partnership with some of the government agencies, the ministries that support digital transformation, trade and industry development, and maybe even agricultural and rural development. So all of these are important parts of that whole ecosystem.
So through your working with many SMEs in Vietnam,
Yes.
how do you feel about the opportunities for them in the local market and also in the international market?
Right. So I think if you look at the last 2 years coming out from the COVID pandemic, the Vietnamese economy has actually done very well. Right? It's probably one of the faster growing economies in Asia, if not globally. And I think that reflects the strength of the domestic production capability. So it is there, right? Vietnam is an economic powerhouse already, and I think the potential for growth is significant. I mean, we are the third largest economy in Southeast Asia today. And I think perhaps in the next 10 years or so, there are estimates that Vietnam could even overtake and become the second largest Southeast Asian economy behind Indonesia. So the strength of the production is there. What I think businesses could focus on a little bit more, and the government, I think, should support that, is to raise the brand equity of Vietnamese products in the region, right? So how do you make Vietnam a brand that is synonymous with quality, with good value for money, not just in Vietnam, but outside? When it comes to international export sales, I think that's one area where Shopee can support Vietnam. Because we have a footprint that encompasses the 6 major economies in Southeast Asia, we have the ability to help partner with Vietnamese enterprises to bring their products overseas. Now, if you are a small or medium enterprise, perhaps you don't have the scale to, for example, charter a whole container and bring, thousands of copies of your products to some of these overseas markets. And if you don't do that, then it's very difficult to know exactly how successful you will be, right? So it's a bit of a chicken and egg. I need to spend a lot of money to invest in setting up an overseas office, worrying about the foreign currency exchange risk, thinking about customs clearance, shipping fees, all kinds of taxation issues. That's difficult for a company that maybe has 10 employees or maybe up to 50 employees to deal with, right? The bigger companies will take care of themselves, right? And of course, we're happy to support them as well, but I think you can understand that many of the bigger companies have the ability to scale and to do this and to maybe even embark on market research before you start spending money. What we do with this feature called Shopee International Platform is we basically tell sellers in Vietnam, if you agree, and it's almost like, please check this box here, then what we will do is we will use artificial intelligence tools to take your product listings, do translation, do a bit of the currency exchange calculations, factor in some of the shipping costs as well as customs clearance, all of those pieces of paperwork and administrative. We will take that and then start listing the product where it is permitted in other overseas markets within Southeast Asia to start off with. What that then looks like is, for almost no additional effort on the part of the Vietnamese enterprise, we are taking their product, and if it's already selling well in Vietnam, then let's put it across to all of these other markets and see what the sales is there, what it's like. I think in the past, we've already reached out in the last 3 years and supported something like 350,000 sellers here in Vietnam to bring their product overseas. And generally, the uplift to their total revenue is somewhere in the range of 20 to 30%. So that's, it's not small, it's not humongous, but I think it's significant. So that's one of the areas that we are constantly trying to grow with the enterprises here. And of course, as we go around, we also look forward to partnering with a lot of the government agencies at the provincial level to help drive and support, their own businesses, not only to grow their revenue stream here in Vietnam, but also to, try and get a bit more export opportunities. And that, I think, aligns with what the Vietnamese government is hoping to do as well.
Yes, sure. Yeah. But what kinds of products that you see most successful in your Shopee international platform, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I think for the moment, fashion. I would say off the top of my head, I don't have the full details, but I would say fashion tends to be one of the highest, grossing areas, right? And I think, again, it reflects, the strength of Vietnamese production already in that industry, and as well as, the quality of the products that can be brought overseas.
So we can see that the cross-border e-commerce platform is very useful for SMEs. But how do you think about the potential of it? Like in the future, how is the cross-border e-commerce market in the future, and how can Shopee can offer to Vietnam to increase the Vietnamese brand image in the international market?
So, this is one of the areas where we constantly have to invest. And when we talk about innovation and e-commerce, this is exactly what I mean.
Yeah.
Right. When it comes to helping our sellers to grow their business overseas, some of the new things that we are trying and playing around with artificial intelligence would include using AI to improve the product listings, right? To help manage some of the customer support experiences, and even to look into how to provide insights that are actionable for the sellers to think about, okay, what products are selling better and how can I adjust my, product listing, my assortment, my portfolio of products in order to better capture the opportunities.
So we can see how Shopee is aligned with the Vietnamese government strategy. But in the future, do you have any plan to increase the investment in Vietnam? What do you focus on in the future?
Well, I don't have any specific plans to share right now,
Yes.
right? But I can say that we have been investing quite significantly. And I think given the potential of Vietnam as an e-commerce digital economy market, there will certainly be more investments. I think the most recent I can think of is we recently broke ground at a sorting center in Binzen.
Yeah.
That's a fairly large facility. And I think you can see that we will have more of these investments, right? We already have close to about 1,000 delivery hubs across the country and almost 25 major sorting centers, some of which have the latest state-of-the-art machinery in order to allow us to process millions of parcels per day. On the Shopee side of the business, we are also making a lot of investments to support sellers with new marketing campaigns. We partner with a lot of the ASEAN countries to drive these efforts at the regional level, including by participating and supporting the Digital Economy Framework Agreement negotiations. And I think if we can move that piece regionally, then that will drive the potential of e-commerce in the region. Other than that, within Vietnam, I would say we are also always looking for opportunities to use technology to support the sellers even more. Earlier, I talked about using artificial intelligence in order to help improve the product listings. Things like enhancing the photos, the write-up, being able to condense and present the information in a more readable and digestible way for consumers. Because at the end of the day, you're looking at how to provide information and convenience to the customer. Also, in terms of keeping up with market trends, for example, video. Video is now a very important part of the sales experience, the sales funnel, understanding how to communicate appealing information to buyers so that they then make informed decisions. And we had a recent collaboration that we announced with YouTube, where we are now tapping on that much larger YouTube affiliate community in order to provide short and maybe even longer form content that will help to provide buyers with a more educated basis on which to make their purchasing decision. Given the potential of Vietnam as an e-commerce destination, for sure, these are areas that we will constantly be on the lookout for. And our investments will reflect, I think, the strong potential that Vietnam has, both as a market as well as an FDI investment destination for multinational companies.
But in terms of customer behaviors, do you see any changes over the years? Actually, we are experiencing a very shopping atmosphere right now with several mega sales campaigns.
Yes,
how do you feel about the customer behaviors?
So I think customer behavior has evolved in terms of familiarity with e-commerce over the last few years. Trust is still very important for the customer. If I pay money online, I want to know that I'm getting a product within a certain time frame, right? And so we need to constantly invest in making sure that the supply chain supports the expectation of the consumer. We need to also see what the consumers are using as their primary source of information before they make a purchasing decision. So, for example, they might go to watch live stream videos and then come back to make a purchase on the platform, or even in integrating some of those features into our own app, right? The whole idea is we want to meet the consumer where they are. Right? And we think that video is becoming increasingly important. So live streaming, during the recent campaign period, I think for 99, we were looking at a 40 times uplift in the number of users that are on the platform. In terms of the sales revenue and the number of orders made, through 99, 11, 11, I think you're looking at an uplift that is somewhere between 6 or even 10 times the normal sales volume, right? So all of those, you're right, it is the end of the year campaign season. And I think consumers are really taking advantage of some of these attractive bargains that they can get. But at the same time, being very sophisticated about keeping costs, in control, being very discerning about, what is the overall cost of shipping relative to the basket size of what they are buying online, and being demanding about, when they get the deliveries. And we have to meet those expectations where they stand.
But I'm kind of curious because I can see that you collaborate with many top KOLs in Vietnam and maybe with a series of live streaming almost every week. I can see some live stream. Yes. So how can you balance because the investment and also the courses you see?
Yeah. KOLs and the influencer community actually is a really important part of the e-commerce ecosystem. So I'm actually really glad that you asked about that, because many people don't realize that actually the e-commerce ecosystem has buyers, sellers, obviously the platforms, but also the affiliate community. And when it comes to driving eyeballs, because eyeballs are ultimately, in a sense, the commodity that underpins e-commerce, a lot of that is driven by, the work of the influencers. The influencer community that we have here in Vietnam, I would say, without getting into specific numbers, is probably on the same magnitude in terms of size as even the community of sellers that we have. They are able to come together and support the sellers to drive sales for their products up.
Happy to hear all of your huge investment here in Vietnam, working with the government, sellers, the buyers, and also the talents, something like that. Yeah,
it's a journey, and again, we are very happy to be part of that journey. We've been here for a long time, and I think we can be very proud of where we've come. If you think about what e-commerce looked like maybe 5 years ago, whether it's here in Vietnam or other parts in Southeast Asia, and the kind of innovations, in terms of providing, stronger guarantees to both buyers and sellers, to raise the trust that they have and the confidence they have to participate in e-commerce. I think we've come a long way, and we look forward to being part of that journey in Vietnam for even longer to come.
Happy to hear that. So
great.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Our podcast is coming to an end right now. So
Great.
do you have any sharings you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, so I think we are very proud of the fact that we've been part of the journey here in Vietnam for e-commerce for the last 10 years. I think we're looking forward to celebrating 10 years of our participation and contribution to the Vietnamese digital economy. And we look forward to working with all of our partners, including consumers here in Vietnam, as well as enterprises, to drive the development of e-commerce and the digital economy so that Vietnam benefits as a whole.
Thanks so much for your time today.
You're very
I
welcome.
believe that our conversation today is very interesting and informative too for our sellers and customers here. So hope to meet you many times in the future when you share further achievements or investment in Vietnam.
Likewise, I enjoyed this conversation a lot, and thank you very much for having me here.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah.